Hello, my name is Frank Christensen and I'm the coordinator of officials for IFAF Europe. Today we're starting the first training tape of a series of 5 concerning defensive offside. In this first one, we're going to look at some examples of a basic offside where the guy jumps and the ball is snapped. And we'll have a look at how the wings should cover this. But before we get that far, let's have a look at what the MOFO and the rulebook have to say.
In the rulebook, we go to Rule 218.2, defensive offside on a scrimmage play. Article 2 says, after the ball is ready for play, offside occurs when a defensive player, A, is in or beyond the neutral zone when the ball is legally snapped. B, contacts an opponent beyond the neutral zone before the ball is snapped. C, contacts the ball before it is snapped. D, threatens an offensive lineman, causing an immediate reaction before the ball is snapped. Or E, crosses the neutral zone and charges towards a teammate back. Rule 715 talks about B requirements. Players aligned in a stationary position within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage may not make quick, abrupt, or exaggerated actions that are not part of normal defensive player movement. In the MOFO, we go to 344, dealing with offsides. A, when a defensive player before the snap moves and an offensive player subsequently moves, a conference between the umpire and the wing is mandatory. This is to determine if the defensive player was in the neutral zone and if the offensive player was threatened. When in question, the offensive player is threatened. If the team A player who first moved is not threatened, it is a false start. B says, when a defensive player before the snap crosses the neutral zone and charges towards a team A back, it is a dead ball offside foul. The time to call this as a foul is when the defender passes the hip of the nearest team A lineman. C goes on to say, don't rule a defensive player offside if he is stationary and only intruding on the neutral zone by a trivial amount. D, don't be picky about offside, particularly on fields that are not marked perfectly. And E says, don't call offside if the defensive player is moving forward at the snap but is not actually in the neutral zone. And finally, 13.2, dealing with responsibilities for wings on basic scrimmage play, says, observing offside and other line of scrimmage infractions by Team B players, especially those between you and the ball. So as a wing, you are primarily responsible for anything that happens between you and the ball, and secondarily responsible for what happens on the other side of the ball. So your most of your focus should be on your side of the ball. And that was the book. Now let's have a look at some game film. In this training tape, we're looking at the regular, normal, run-of-the-mill defensive offside. So looking at this defensive end here, he jumps into the neutral zone and the ball is snapped. That is exactly the type of offside that we have to call, and correctly called by this line judge at the bottom of the field. In this next example, we have 2 defensive players moving, and the first one we could have let go. If he was the only one moving, it wouldn't have been enough for defensive offside. He simply doesn't get into the neutral zone. But the second one does get into, you can tell that he's over the ball, and then the ball gets snapped. So we have both criteria met and correctly called by the wing at the bottom of the field. On this next example, we have a situation where we've got defensive offside on one side of the ball, but we have both wings throwing their flags. Now, this is not illegal. I mean, it is permissible to throw this flag even though the foul happens on the other side of the ball. But if you're going to do that, you better make absolutely sure that you have full control of what happens on your side of the ball.
And again, the further away from the ball this offside happens, the more unlikely it is that the offside wing will be able to call it correctly. But here, with a defensive tackle moving, it's okay for both these wings to call this defensive offside. Here we're looking at the defensive tackle away from the ball. There he goes. And again, it's okay for both wings to throw this flag. It certainly would also be okay if only the linesman throws it. But again, for the line judge, if you want to throw this, just make sure that you have full control of what happens on your side of the ball and on both sides of the line of scrimmage. This next example is an example where it's okay for both wings to throw the flag. Actually, I would expect both wings to be included in this, since we have defensive players on both sides of the ball jumping offside and the ball subsequently being snapped. In this last example, we're looking at the linebacker coming up, and he goes offside, and the ball is snapped. And again, we have two flags here, even though we only have offside on to one side of the officials. But again, just to repeat myself, the closer the offside happens to the ball, the more likely it is we'll have two wings throwing the flag, and the further away from the ball, the more likely it is that we will only have one official. Keep in mind that as soon as we have two flags, now we have to have a conference after the play, and we slow down the penalty enforcement. But on the other hand, it is also a backup in case the linesman here for some reason misses this. Then we have the line judge calling it instead. So again, it's a trade-off. But if you want to flag something on the other side of the ball, just make sure that you have your own house in order. And that was it for this training tape with the regular type defensive offside. I hope you found something that you can use on the field.